Tommy, we were supposed to have a double episode this week. We were going to have two guests. Desmond Bane was going to jump on with us as well for a quick check-in. They announced yesterday that he's got a toe sprain and will be out 2 to 3 weeks. So we let him off the hook. He'll be back soon when he's healthy and back in the lineup. But we're looking forward to catching up with Desmond soon. And we've touched on Desmond a little bit on the show. And I got a chance to talk about Desmond a bunch last week on NBA Countdown prior to the Grizzlies Timberwolves game. And I think he had a solid argument for most improved player last year. And I think he has another solid argument for most improved player this year. Right now, he's tied for the 4th best odds in the most improved player market on DraftKings. And he's sort of bunched together when we talk about odds. He's sort of bunched together with our guy Tyrese Halliburton, Lauri Markkanen, and Tyrese Maxey. And when I look at those 4 guys specifically, like those are all young guys that are making jumps in their career. And Maxey, his counting numbers are great. The volume is up. The efficiency numbers are down. But when you look at Desmond Bane, Lauri Markkanen, and Tyrese Halliburton, their volume and efficiency has increased. And specifically with Bane, the really surprising thing to me is his playmaking ability, Tommy. He's averaging a career high in assists, 4.7 assists per game. That's a big leap to me.
Do you want to talk about the front runner on DraftKings right now for this award?
Of course, but then I'm going to just get into a rant here. And my rant is that the most improved player needs to have some sort of criteria. We need criteria for the voters. And look, last year, so there's precedent. Shai Gilgeous-Alexander is the front runner right now for most improved player. He's got odds of plus 170. Ja Morant set a precedent, I think, last year where you have a guy that was already a star that took a leap into all-star, all-NBA level territory. Shai is doing that this season, and we should acknowledge that and appreciate that. Historically, to me, the most improved player was always someone who obviously made improvement in their game and took a step forward. But generally speaking, it was a younger player, or a veteran player that all of a sudden got in the right system and made a big leap. And I don't know, there's something about someone who's already a star making a jump where I think if I look at Bane, Markkanen, Halliburton, these guys weren't stars prior to the season. They were really good players, and now all of a sudden they've taken a jump.
So this is my question. We talked about this with Tyrese a little bit last week, but speaking of precedent, the only guy in the last 10 years who's won this award who hasn't made the playoffs is Brandon Ingram in 1920. But for the most part, it's the person who wins this award is on a good team. They don't need to be a championship team. They're on a good team. Shai's been incredible. I don't think the Thunder are making the playoffs. I'm not sure the Thunder think they're making the playoffs. And so at what point, does, even if he puts up 31, 32 a game, if this is a team that is, 4th in the lottery, does that not make a difference?
I think it will weigh on voters. And again, betting odds and the people that actually vote on these awards are two very different things. When you look at Shai specifically, he had really good efficiency numbers in his 3rd year. There was a pretty significant dip last year in his 4th year, and he's back to those same efficiency numbers that he had in his 3rd year. Now, the difference is the volume is way up. He's decided to take less threes. His 3-point shooting numbers are fine, but really it's the drives. We've all seen him. He's a master at his craft with his footwork and his shot fakes and his change of pace. He can get to the rim and create good offense at will, but he's been doing that for 3 years. And I'm not saying if he ends up averaging 32, 6, and 5 for the season and the Suns or the Thunder are 4th in the lottery, I'm not saying he doesn't deserve the award, but by my definition of what the criteria should be, I think it's more about players making a big jump rather than a player all of a sudden getting more volume, if that makes sense. By the way, Tommy, I agree with you to an extent on the most improved player. I don't necessarily think that that voters take into account winning with most improved player. I do think they take into account with the 6th man of the year. And that's where I'm like hesitant. Like I'm looking at the odds right now for Bones Highland. He's at plus 3,500 for sixth man of the year. And we talk about how terrible his 2-point shooting has been, but the guy's shooting 50% from three on 6 attempts a game. His splits when he's with Jokic on the court are great, just like they were in his rookie year. The problem for him, I think, is that team craters when Jokic is off the floor. Jokic's on-off rating the last 2 seasons has been insane. And so I think he'll get hurt there. And this is where the odds-on favorite Russell Westbrook right now, he's at plus 120 on DraftKings Sportsbook. He's been spectacular off the bench. 9 games, 18 points a game, 8 assists, 5 rebounds, 45% from the field, 41% from three. He's been so good. The Lakers suck. They're 3-10. They got the third worst record in the NBA. I don't, outside of some spectacular trade, I don't know how all of a sudden they become a play-in team.
How could you give? We both love Russell. We both have, praised him this year, even with all the craziness. How can you give him this award? If they right now the Pelicans with the Lakers pick would be picking first in the NBA draft based on the lottery odds. How could you possibly give him this award? How can you give anyone on that team an award like this based off of their start?
That's a good question right there. That's a good question.
Can I give you a sleeper on this 6-man?
Yeah, I want to hear your sleeper.
I mean, it's our boy, so we're very biased. Kevin Love at plus 4,000 on this list feels like somebody that should be significantly higher based off both his shooting numbers this year and also how that team is. And I know I always harp about them. I'm the Cavs fan all of a sudden, but looking at this list, if we go down the list, this is a guy that has been, and he almost won last year. I think he was second or third in voting last year, but he's only continued just sort of reinventing himself off the bench.
Yeah, I didn't realize that you, as a Chicago sports fan, would all of a sudden become a Cleveland homer. It's a shocking turn of events for me. It really is. It's a shocking.
We do
one
podcast. We do one podcast in Cleveland, and all of a sudden,
I do think though, Tommy, that the 6th man of the year, if you play on a playoff team and there is considerable measurement of impact to winning, I do think that has an influence on voting, which is one of the reasons Jordan Poole right now at plus 300, he's got the most money bet on him, the most percentage of bets on Jordan Poole. There's 2 things to think about with Jordan Poole right here. Number one, I think there's a chance he moves into the starting lineup at some point. Clay, has not looked great physically. I think eventually there is that regression to the mean, and he ends up shooting close to 40%, and his numbers go up. But there's a chance he could move into the starting lineup. I know there's some Warriors Twitter fans that are pining for that. But really, for me, he doesn't have an impact on winning right now. He hasn't had an impact, I should say. He hasn't had an impact on winning right now. Their bench units have been really bad. When he's in with the starters, it's not particularly great either. He's a -9 net rating overall per 100 possessions. I have trouble voting for a guy like that. The guy to me right now, he's been out of the lineup, but the guy to me right now is Malcolm Brogdon, who's been really solid. He's got the highest usage percentage of his career, the highest player efficiency rating of his career, and they're the number 1 team in the East. And he has fit seamlessly with that team, adjusting to newer role, coming off the bench. So I think if there's a chance for Brogdon there, and again, if you're willing to take a flyer on plus 1,200 odds, that's a pretty damn good bet. As always, see the show notes for details.